It's Friday, February the 7th. This is Quintus Jett, President of Abundance for America. In the past few days, I've had different Yang Gang leaders have reached out to me, and they've wanted to know what I thought in the wake of the Iowa caucus results, and in particular, what does this mean and what are we doing next? The reason they ask me, I think, is that they know I have experience participating in or leading projects where a number of volunteers, sometimes volunteers who didn't really know each other ahead of time, would get together and to try to get something accomplished together, like as volunteers, and I have been able to do that in various scale. So to give you an example, in the context of New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, there have been periods where I've had to manage volunteers for, let's say, whether small groups, like sort of 5-10 people, working over a period of a day to a couple hundred over a period of weeks. Excuse me, 100 over a period of weeks. But then even at one point, it was probably the peak was like having to deal with definitely hundreds per day. Again, all of whom had never known each other before. So I guess my point is that I know what this is like. So there will be times where, in order to work together, you may have a sense of, you know why you're doing it, and you have a sense of what, but you don't really know how you're going to get there. And I just want to give really the good news is that that's fine. We don't really need to know exactly just this moment as a Yang group, exactly what we're going to do as a group, or even actually what you're going to do. But the key thing is to have a sense of why our candidate and what the job is, the job to be done. And the major thing that we should be focusing on in terms of what should be done is that we have 27 contests coming up in March. 27. And so one of the things about this primary that's been kind of like surprising or elusive is how fast this thing goes. In the past, when Obama was running for president, the time between Iowa and Texas, for example, that period of time was 2.5 months. This year, in 2020, the time between the Iowa caucuses and the Texas primaries is only 30 days. So this is a highly compressed schedule. This is really like a national primary in disguise. This thing is going to be moving very, very fast. And so what this means is, moving forward, just as we're looking at coming in the wake of Iowa, which, yes, was disappointing. Being in the single figures was disappointing. Between that and New Hampshire coming up, we as a group collectively need to pay attention to the whole game. Like beyond, we have to pay attention to New Hampshire, yes, and I know that there are Yang Gang independently organizing from Massachusetts to make a difference in New Hampshire. And yes, we do have early states. We have activities underway, like within Yang Gang, to focus on places like Nevada and South Carolina. But it really is incumbent upon us to look at the whole game that's coming upon us now. That March is extremely high scale. And so when thinking about all the different states that are coming up, and chances are there's so many primary contest areas, most likely, if you're listening to this now on February the 7th, chances are that your state is likely going to be voting in March, most likely. And in fact, depending on the state, early voting may have already started. Or some of you, such as if you're in California, Minnesota, you might have already received your ballot and might have already voted. So that's how much of a close time frame that we're operating it with. Two things to say about this in particular. One is I'm going to say something that the campaign itself, HQ, located in New York City, what they probably won't tell you. But I have met them, and also I've seen other presidential campaigns. I think the patterns are pretty the same, very similar, is that they don't know what to do. On some level, HQ does not know what to do, because they're in the middle of it. They're really working very hard. There have been layoffs that have taken place in order to secure money, conserve money to be able to continue. And at least one of I'd say I've at least received examples of staff. They're actually more concerned about you as supporters. They're concerned about you not having hope. When really, I think there is more hope in some ways out in the Yang Gang than perhaps even in HQ right now. So really, it's up to us. It's up to us in the Yang Nation, those of you who support Andrew, to really to pick this up and find the most strategic thing that we can do, wherever we may happen to live. Second point I'm going to make clear is that phone banking, canvassing, and text banking, as we think about them, as we've been talking about them, that won't be sufficient, and that's probably necessarily for you not the best thing to do. Is one thing to be in Iowa, where things are kind of self-contained, and to some extent within New Hampshire, to be able to focus on canvassing and phone banking. But the truth is, this is a very big country, and even in states that you're living in, if you're living in a state that would be considered relatively small, even that there are too many people and too many households to reach to be able to feasibly do extensive phone banking. So phone banking is not a solution that is really feasible to work for most of us going into the phase of the campaign that we're having now. And actually, canvassing won't be on an extensive way. Will not be very feasible either. Not just for us, but for any one of the other candidates. The only candidate who seems to have possibly the organization to make a dent in this is Bernie Sanders' campaign, and even his campaign is making decisions about which tiny slivers of area are they going to be canvassing, because it's just too large. So what that means is, wherever you live, depending on where you live, the key is going to be defining for yourself and with other Yang Gang what's the most effective way of reaching out to people. And what does that look like? At this point, the thing that affects Andrew's chances the most, and bear with me because this sounds very it's very intangible. It is your light and your character and our character. At this point, with the uncertainty and with the most recent loss, the biggest test to Andrew Yang and all of us who are Yang supporters, the test occurring is with our character. People do see how we react to adversity and to uncertainty and at loss. I mean, are we people who are just gonna that lose faith? Are we the kind of group that's gonna start taking out our any lack of success, blame other people? Or are we the kind of people who are like Andrew is, which is being human, operating with some intelligence, operating with some dignity, and most important, operating with humanity in the face of uncertainty and in the face of indeed struggle, because what we are doing together and the changes that we're trying to do for our communities and for America is important, and that we are not going to back down on that message. So in a way, what we're trying to achieve together in some ways is very simple. This is a test of character and a test of our path together, and yes, our faith. And the most important thing is we know why we're here, and we just need to come back to what we are trying to do, especially in the month of March. So in other words, I'll be specific just so we're clear. If you live in the southern region of the United States, you're going to be voting for the most part in March. So that's whether you're Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Florida. Did I mention Georgia? Pretty much Texas, a little bit to the west, Oklahoma. Pretty much every southern state, Virginia, every southern state will be voting in March. If you're from certain other U.S. territories like Puerto Rico, American Samoa, Northern Marianas Islands, or even if you're Democrats abroad, you're going to be voting. Like your voting will be completed. If you're in the New England area, if you're in Maine, Massachusetts, or Vermont, you will be voting in March. If you're towards the west, if you're from California, Colorado, Utah, Idaho, Arizona, Washington State, you will be voting. Midwest, if you're from Minnesota, Michigan, North Dakota, Illinois, Ohio, you will be voting. So again, these will be really interesting times coming up. We're going to have the debate tonight, and so as usual, sort of the light that Andrew represents and what he displays, even in the limited amount of time that he may be given, always makes a difference, because pretty much every time he appears in a debate, there's always some progress. More people discover who he is or are inspired to discover who he is. And then when New Hampshire comes, there'll be information available. New Hampshire is going to be an opportunity to see where we are, and further information about what our strengths and weaknesses might be going forward. And so I'm going to be doing some analysis on those results to turn that around so that all of you can have them as well. But with that, I hope everyone takes a deep breath. Do what you will. Each do what we can. And here comes New Hampshire.